journalist Michael Tracey and Tara Palmeri were at the center of a viral debate on Piers Morgan's show. Tracey's become notable skeptic of some of the reporting surrounding the Jeffrey Epstein files and has repeatedly cast doubt about claims made by alleged victims of Epstein.
On Morgan's show, he went off on journalists such as Palmeri, whom he says are promoting unfounded conspiracies.
You know what the conspiracy is? The conspiracy is this unthinking, brainless hysteria combined with journalistic credulity, combined with an unwillingness to do any actual research as to the facts and evidence.
Then Palmeri turned on Tracey, accusing him of attacking the victims and suggesting that his arguments are the result of him being paid by some confidential source that led to this now viral moment.
I think it's fair to ask, are you being paid by any of the men who've been accused by Jeffrey Epstein?
I'm having trouble hearing right now. I wish I could respond to whatever nonsense she just blurted out.
An astonishing coincidence that you suddenly lost your hearing when you were asked a very difficult question.
I
and
swear
rather
to God.
telling.
Tracey did eventually, however, respond to that question. Watch this.
Rather than
Scandal.
defend the merits of her journalistic output, which she can't because it's indefensible, what does she do? She tries to impugn me personally, tries to imply or
You're not
allege
answering
What's the answer to the question?
motive. Of course I'm not being
What's the
paid by
answer?
anyone. I am paid by my
It's a yes or
readers
no
on
question.
Substack, you idiot.
That exchange got a lot of strong reactions online. Reporter Julie K. Brown wrote on X, quote, "I've wondered this for a long time. Who is paying Michael Tracey to harass and smear Epstein survivors? Which powerful men are behind this propaganda effort?"
Others like Glenn Greenwald defended Tracey. Greenwald responded to Palmeri saying, "I have differences with Michael on Epstein stuff for sure, but spreading baseless innuendo that some guilty conspirator is paying him to express his extreme skepticism is cheap, and I think beneath you, particularly given his clear denial unless you have evidence that he is." And writer Richard Hanania says, "Now you see why they won't debate Michael Tracey. They have nothing. The entire Epstein thing is lies. Just watch this. These people seem like they've never been asked a single skeptical question about what they're doing." Yeah, this does not, I mean, it will come as no surprise to our viewers at this point that I am broadly on Michael Tracey's side in all this.
That you lose your
agree
hearing
with
when asked a tough
everything.
question? You're on that side?
He couldn't hear her, and then when the question got
He
asked,
heard Piers Morgan 2 seconds later.
and then he answered it. He's
No.
not paid.
No, he waited. We sat and watched the whole thing. He said, "What?" And Piers Morgan's like, "Can you hear me?" He's like, "Barely." Like, it's
Okay,
like, are you
answer the
kidding
question.
me?
He said he is not paid by Epstein's survivors or by whoever. He's paid. He's on Substack. He's paid by readers. This is such a cope. Whenever someone says in an argument, "Oh, well, who's paying you?" That means they don't have strength. They don't believe in the convictions of what they're saying. They have nothing every time. Argue the point. Argue the argument. If you have to resort to just, "Oh, well, you're being paid by someone," losers do that. People who don't know what they're talking about do that. And Tara Palmeri is one of them. She's a fraud and a liar
Whoa,
and
strong
a
language.
propagandist. And she has nothing. If she had something, if she could beat him in an argument, then she would do that. But she can't because he's substantially right and she's substantially wrong. Now, I don't co-sign every single point Tracey has made in this debate, but he has been right to point out, which I've pointed out, I basically learned it from him, that the claims by the survivors have changed over time from many of the survivors. And we have to make of that what you will, but that raises my skepticism when people say one thing and then say something else later.
You know what, Robbie? I think you're a hypocrite. And you know why? Because President Trump done sued CBS for a pause that Vice President Kamala took after answering a question while she gathered her thoughts about foreign affairs. This man took a pregnant pause to answer who was paying him. And then after like a minute, he found some kind of answer to retaliate and attack her
Kamala Harris was
character
in
in the
person.
same way. It doesn't matter. This man could hear and he's pretending like he couldn't hear. And even if he's not getting paid, I think that's what a lot of people saw the clip. It says like, even Piers Morgan's like, "Oh, convenient that you can't hear." Nobody believed.
It's never cut out on you when you're doing one of these things. It happens all the time.
He heard, okay, and he had to unfluster himself and take a minute to figure out how he was going to respond to her and fight fire with fire. In my opinion,
Okay,
I think
he's
that
not being paid by an Epstein.
fine, but I think that the misogyny is still real. He had to gather his thought. The fact that he is acting like somebody who doesn't believe victim just because he's taking one example of a victim that maybe has a spotty story and saying
There are
the rest of the
18
people, okay, but the rest of the people that have been victimized, that has been proven victimized by Epstein, that we
it
would have, because we've seen 2008, he was convicted specifically of solicitation of prostitution of a minor. So that minor,
No.
okay, so.
Not Epstein. Again, I don't know exactly what Michael has said about this, but I accept Epstein's guilt.
So,
Epstein abused underage women.
In 2019,
but that's not what
Epstein
we're
was
talking about.
charged.
We're talking about others.
So Epstein was charged in 2019 with sex trafficking of minors.
Right.
We did not get to see that case through, or we would have probably heard
He was
about the
not charged
trafficking.
with sex trafficking of minors.
What,
That's not what he was.
federally charged with sex trafficking of minors.
No. He was charged with soliciting.
In 2019, I said. In 2008, yes. In 20. So we didn't get to see that case through in 2019, where he was sex trafficking minors. So we don't know who was all involved in this trafficking
he was charged
ring.
with that. That's not proof.
Right. But most people confidently can say that he probably was doing something unsavory. And so watching men get on TV and say that they're not going to listen to women in this situation and just hear them out, when we know that this man has done this and been convicted of this once before, and people expanding that out and saying that it could be a larger ring, why are we not wanting all the information about this? I'm not cheating.
He was not convicted of that. He was
convicted.
guilty of what he was convicted of.
Yes,
which is
prostitution of a minor.
Yes, he did that. But
Yes.
the idea that he trafficked girls to
was
other
something that he was
people,
charged with,
but not convicted
we don't know
of.
exactly. He wasn't. We're never going to know. But the questions surrounding his death
What
and
I'm
why
saying
we're
is
never
you
going to
can't
know,
cite that as
and the
evidence.
powerful
The
people.
fact that he was charged is not evidence.
I know, but the powerful people that obviously would have been implicated or involved in this are constantly a question. So
If
it's
so
natural
obvious,
to ask.
Give me a name.
Okay,
Give me a single name.
we're waiting for that information, but like we said, the victims
they don't have it.
or they might not want to be sued. And
They're
Elon Musk
liars.
is no. I'm not going to accept that you say all the victims are liars. That's not the case. Some people that might not want to be named or
Not of
attached to
Epstein.
this.
I didn't say ones of Epstein.
But of other
said-
people, maybe they don't want to be
Give me a
their
name.
legacy to be other
me a name.
people taking
waiting.
advantage of them at a young age. Maybe they don't want to go on record saying that. Maybe some others don't want to be sued. These are all things Elon Musk is offering to pay the legal fees of anybody who possibly gets sued. Okay, put it on pen and paper, give the money up front, and then we'll see who comes forward. But right now, we're looking at Congress to do its job of oversight and explain if there are any smoking guns here. And we still only have half of the
Ro Khanna went
file.
onto the House floor to give us those names, and then we looked up those names and found out those were totally unrelated to Epstein. So how many times do the pushers of this conspiracy have to be exposed as having nothing or having the wrong names or maligning falsely involved people? How many times does that have to happen before everybody admits Occam's razor here, the most obvious thing, which is that it's just false that there were all these other people whom Epstein was sex trafficking girls to, when there's no evidence of that in any of the released files. Epstein himself had a predilection for this and was rightly charged for it. There's no evidence that other people, that there was a list of people for whom he was finding girls. He wanted the girls himself. There's no evidence that it was a criminal conspiracy with other people. There's none. There's nothing.
Yeah, well, perhaps we're gaslighting people because there are a lot of really wealthy billionaire people that were attached and surrounded by Epstein. So to see and have a friend of somebody who is convicted of prostitution of minors, and to say that there's no one else that could ever been involved in
We
this.
don't accept that this level of guilt by association is like morally sound. We don't just start saying, oh, well, you know, they were probably up to no good because they texted with somebody who was really bad once. Like, that's not a
if this ever does,
tendency.
but if there ever is follow through with what Thomas Massey and Ro Khanna are doing, and there ever is some connection that there was a larger ring, all the words that you're saying, you're going to eat them and just sit there and wallow in your sadness, because this is not a good stance to take if there's even an inkling of a minor being taken advantage of. And that's what people are saying. It's better to err on the side of caution when it comes to young children being taken advantage
I've grown
of.
confident that we won't ever get to that point, because I've given ample opportunity for the Epstein lunatics to provide any evidence of this whatsoever, and everything they show us is false or misleading. Like, oh, look, here's children.
But they're being
That's a
led
picture
on-
of somebody with his own children.
They're being
unrelated.
led on a wild goose chase, though. The FBI redacted.
We're all being led on a wild goose
Exactly, but it's
by
coming.
the Epstein.
It's starting with the head of the administration, which is why, going back to our earlier conversation, like Pam Bondi said there was a list. Now there's no list.
Right.
She
When
said the
there was a
FBI.
list, she was wrong or lying.
She said there. So that's what I'm saying. Or she's lying about there not being a list. Either way, we don't know. She said the FBI redacted all these names, and now she's unredacting them. Like, they're playing games. So you wonder, if it's that transparent and there's no sex trafficking ring and there's no other implications here, why are you going to such great lengths to make it confusing for Congress that's trying to simply do their job of oversight? That's a real question, and I think that should be answered. And at this point, they've done so much with the runaround and the rigmarole that they put everybody through that people really want to know, wait, what's happening? Why is there so much chaos around this? Why can't they just be transparent with the people who have a job to oversee this kind of thing?
This is becoming like flat earth stuff. I don't have to prove a negative. The sensational claim is being made by the people who say there is a cabal of international pedophile elites whom Jeffrey Epstein was a pimp of little girls. That is a pretty out there claim, so you have to prove that if you're making that claim. And they have nothing. Nothing.
Well, I think in the UK,
so I don't have to try to.
They feel like Prince Andrew, they have something.
You have to convince me it is.
There's people like Prince Andrew. He's a very powerful person in the UK that has been directly tied to Epstein in ways that make the entire country pretty much uncomfortable, which is why he's been ousted in the way that he has. So that's one simple example right there. Well, so the more that we connect these dots.
No, it's not, because it's not an example of sex. He was accused by Virginia Giuffre, who was an adult at the time. Like, she's not an underage trafficked person. So that does not speak to, it speaks to, again, if you're uncomfortable with what these people have done, you are welcome to feel that way. I'm uncomfortable with having a royal family in the first place. They should all resign from their positions. But it does not, the worst thing that's said about him is still not part of the conspiracy. The international sex trafficking cabal of little girls is not part of it.
And I think the biggest conversation from Piers Morgan's show is, why does it rile anyone up to have people look into this? It doesn't matter if it's to no end. It doesn't matter how long it takes. Why are you so anti people spending time on this when the government spends way more time on more nonsensical things? Why?
I am, because we've done a very unprecedented thing. We've set a new standard for ourselves in terms of the release of investigative documents that contain unverified, uncorroborated information, random smears, and we are using that now to destroy the lives of people who have nothing to do with Epstein. And I think that's kind of bad. I say that as someone who is for privacy and civil liberties. This is a dramatic thing to do in service of what? In nothing. It's turned up nothing. It's turned up nothing.
Well, it's not going away, so.
Well, then I guess I'm going to keep talking upset about it. More to talk about on Rising. Stay with us.